My whole life, I was told that life was unpredictable. I was told to follow my dreams, do what I love, and do whatever makes me happy. I was told that I would have full freedom to use the world as my canvas. But as soon as I started painting, I realized maybe life is predictable. There comes an age, roughly around your early 20s, where you find yourself in a really weird position. You have all these aspirations, all these goals, all these dreams, and these are the things that make you special. They give you a purpose in the world and a reason to be different from the person next to you. But as a young adult, you're forced to pick between chasing your aspirations or living a reality. Or in other words, choosing a path that's unpredictable yet fulfilling, or a predictable path that's financially secure. I read Solanin a couple years ago and I didn't think too much about it. Don't get me wrong, it was a good read, but it was never anything more than that. At least it wasn't during that time in my life. Where I always asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And as a kid, this question was easy. I want to be a singer, a basketball player, a scientist, or whatever. But as you get older, this question starts to get harder and harder to answer. And I think I reached a point where I started neglecting my future altogether because it was something I just couldn't figure out. I would always joke around and say, whatever happens, happens, but that can only get you so far. And I realized that at some point you have to pick a direction. And so I did a little experiment and asked a couple of my friends to pick between the two paths that I mentioned before. And the results honestly didn't surprise me. 83% of my friends chose the secure, predictable path, while the rest of the 17% chose the fulfilling, unpredictable one. And I know, sometimes these paths can actually be crossed through proper work ethic. It's 100% possible to have a life where every moment is new and fulfilling while also being financially secure. And I completely agree with you, but for the large bulk of us, we just can't afford to live with the potential consequences that a risky path can bring. Whether it's because of our own financial difficulties or especially if you have other people that depend on you to succeed, because at that point, every potential risk you take is toppled onto them. So that really leaves us with only one option, living an unfulfilling life. And that's what Solanin depicts. It doesn't sugarcoat bullshit or even try to hide it. This is the life that most of us choose. Meiko is our main female lead, and her day-to-day activities look something like this. She wakes up, goes to her terrible and dreadful job, goes back home, spends a few hours of her freedom to do whatever, only to wake up the next day to start the cycle all over again. This is her entire purpose. There's no room for growth, no room for dreams, no room for anything because she's stuck in a state of stagnation. Meiko isn't happy with her life, but at the same time, she's not unhappy. She's just simply going through the motions, living an empty life. This is stagnation, and Inio Asano depicts this state of life in a really relatable way. So that brings us to the question, how do you break free? Fear. The emotional state of fear is what breaks this state of life. I know it might sound crazy and odd because whenever we think of fear, we always associate it with a negative connotation, but in this case, the active feeling of fear is what helps Meiko come to a life-changing decision. And personally, I relate to this a lot. The idea of having a life filled with repetition scares me, but it also simultaneously drives me to do something about it. It could be as small as taking a different road to work, or as big as changing my major in college. Without the fear of stagnation, there wouldn't be an impulse or a motive to better myself. And with that in mind, Meiko just goes on and says, fuck it, I quit. I'm done going to this brainless ass job. I'm done pretending to be happy. I'm done acting fulfilled. I'm done living a life that's empty. But most importantly, Meiko is done staying in one place. She wants to be free. And that's what she does. There's a scene where Meiko tells her mom about her decision, and obviously her mom gets pretty upset and asks why. Why would you do such a serious thing without talking or thinking thoroughly about it? And Meiko responded with a really simple answer. I was caught up in a moment. And that's all it takes when you've been stuck in a stagnant lifestyle for so long. All it takes is one bad interaction, one bad day to spark a sudden impulse to just drop everything and start over. Meiko has always been looking for an opportunity, an excuse like this. She was always seeking for more than what she already had. And now she can, right? Well, it's not that easy. When your entire life purpose has revolved around doing the same things, it's hard to venture beyond that, even if you made the necessary changes to do so. I know it might sound very contradictory and silly, but think about it this way. When we were young, our dreams were absurd. They were limitless because we had no expectations. Ignorance was truly bliss at the time, but as you get older, that ignorance starts to fade away as you live. Naturally, you start to learn, you start to experience, you start to grow. But most importantly, you start to realize that the world isn't going to give you every opportunity, every chance to use your experiences in a way which you feel fulfilled. So when Meiko finally makes the decision to start over, she becomes hesitant, she becomes ambiguous, she starts getting anxious because she can't seem to find an answer. Maybe what she wants is too unrealistic, or maybe she isn't confident in herself to pursue something new. Maybe the opportunities have already passed and it's too late for her. But whatever it is, Meiko has found herself in a position where there's no path in sight, no direction, no future. She's lost. There's a quote from Meiko that describes this perfectly. Freedom without purpose is boredom. Freedom doesn't create fulfillment, nor does it create progression on its own. These values come from our own sentiments, desires, and most importantly, perspective. Freedom is used to make these values a reality. And Meiko needs more time to explore her freedom in order to find these values. So in the meantime, Meiko looks towards her boyfriend, Taneda. Taneda is in a similar position as Meiko. He works for this illustrator company he doesn't care about, and he's also trapped in a very stagnant and empty life. But Taneda isn't lost. He knows what he truly wants to do, but won't give up his security to pursue his passion. Music. Every panel we see Taneda with a guitar, you can see the biggest smile on his face, but when he has to go back to living, you see that all change. Knowing this, Meiko gets frustrated with him. I mean, he has all this potential, he's found a perspective, a purpose, and here he is wasting it on something he hates. So Meiko takes the first step in starting over, encouraging Taneda to do the same, letting him know that it's better to try and regret than regret not trying at all. And that's what Taneda does. He tries again, but this time he wants to do it correctly so that he's in control of his direction. Taneda knows that his chances of him making a living off his passion is nearly impossible, but it doesn't matter because for the first time, Taneda feels like he's working towards something. He's finally feeling fulfilled after all these years. He gets his band members all back together, he's writing music, he even includes Meiko in his sessions hoping she can find her own answer along his journey. But obviously when you take such a huge risk, there are consequences. There were times where Taneda was second guessing if he made the right choice. Both Taneda and Meiko were financially struggling. They couldn't even afford basic needs and it was getting harder and harder to live. But despite that, to the very end, both of them chose not to go back. They didn't want to lose what they had now, and they wanted to. And then life just hits. Not everyone is going to see their desires, sentiments, perspectives, and direction to the end. Not everyone is going to reach fulfillment in their life. Sometimes it is too late, and sometimes the regrets will stay with you forever. And that's the hard truth that Solanin illustrates. Taneda never got to see what he was walking towards. His path ended short, and he probably left with a lot of regrets. He lived an empty life, and he left unsatisfied. Was he able to change anything? No, not really. Was he too late? Yes, but he knew that it was better to try and regret than to regret not trying at all. Taneda's death had a huge impact on Meiko's progression in finding her own direction. Once again, she's become frozen. At this point, she's lost all motivation in doing anything and completely shuts down. She goes absolutely insane and starts breaking things, hurting herself, and gets even more lost than she was from the beginning. But one day, after Taneda's dad comes over to collect his things, Meiko looks over and sees Taneda's guitar. And then something just clicks. She's found a purpose, that being seeing Taneda's direction to the very end and proving that he existed. Although this purpose does not necessarily belong to her, that can wait because what matters to her right now is seeing and giving Taneda a proper conclusion. And that alone is enough for Meiko to finally experience working towards fulfillment. During the band's final song, you can see Meiko realize that after this, she's probably going to have to revert back to her old life. She still doesn't know what she wants to do and she's still trying to find her perspective on life. But after reading Solanin, I realized that being lost isn't the problem. Because when you're lost, there's no predetermined path. You're forced to be creative in finding new ways for fulfillment. In the epilogue, we see that even in the future, Meiko is still lost. She's constantly quitting her job and trying to find what she wants to do. But Meiko doesn't feel trapped anymore. She's opened herself to new perspectives, and whenever those start to feel stagnant, she moves on to the next thing. Meiko may be lost, but she's definitely moving forward. She's no longer looking back or standing still, and she's in control of her direction, something I'm struggling to comprehend and put into my life. It's kind of funny how I randomly decided to pick up Solanin again at a really crucial time, and I'm glad I did. I don't know what I want to do, and I don't know what purpose I want to implement, but I think that's okay. I know it's been like 2 months since my last upload. This video took way longer than I expected, so I'm sorry about that. Hopefully the next one doesn't take as long. Maybe we'll see. But thanks for watching.